I'm hearing music.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay! Okay. I'm on my iPad now.
Excellent.
Hold on. Turn that off. Yeah, there we go. Wow. Wow.
All right. I think we're going to get started here. How exciting. My name is Elizabeth Waterman, and I am a photographer living in Los Angeles. I am so excited to be doing this amazing panel today on drag and chosen family with partners Album and Gallery that is currently showing a body of my work, Gorgeous Drag, InterPride, which is an amazing nonprofit, and Juanita More, who is one of the most extraordinary drag queens, and we're so excited to have her today. So we have a lot of really amazing things planned. And of course, we have Michelle Meow, who's going to be interviewing Juanita and members of InterPride. And we have so much talent today, I don't even know what to do with myself. So, well, I thought we could start the event by showing some of the work from the show, Gorgeous Drag, that is curated by Album and Gallery. And Stefan, the gallerist, is here. And we were going to show some of the work and talk about it to kind of set the stage on drag queens and how amazing they are, and then we can kind of get into some other subjects. So I'm excited to introduce Stefan, the amazing curator of this show. If you hadn't done this, none of this would have been possible. So
how lovely to be with you again. And Elizabeth, let's go right back. Not long after we first met, you introduced me to some of your what became the Gorgeous Drag exhibition work, and I was immediately captivated. And there were really two things that struck me right from the word go. There was a historical aspect to it. It was between the years of 2014 and 16. You stepped out and you went into what was then still quite sort of dingy backroom scene of Brooklyn drag scene in New York, and you did an extended sort of documentary portrait project, and quite outstanding in many respects. We'll come back to that. But the other thing that really struck me about that was it was a sort of a departure in two ways, that project you undertook. On the one hand, you were there at the time just when things were coming out of the back room, and in the context of a growing public, global, in fact, discussion about gender identity, etc. You were there took some very intimate, in a sense, and raw pictures. At the same time, the second departure that really struck me about this was that there you were, you'd been secluded as a very talented, sought after portrait photographer in your studio. And it was quite a big step to step out and go, took a little camera, which I believe you sort of, when not in use, hid in your bra, into that club scene. So a departure in two ways. But the other thing, and this is, let me put this question to you, you didn't break in. I mean, you went into this scene. How were you received? I mean, it wasn't on a big, it wasn't happening on a big festival stage, as it subsequently would be. So there you were, you know, bravely going there. How were you received in this sort of tightly knit, you know, sort of community?
You know, it was really extraordinary because these drag queens that I was photographing that you see in these images here, and you see some drag queens that are famous now, but I mean, they were so receptive to me taking their pictures. And, you know, for a few years, I was going to these parties and in Bushwick and in Manhattan and all these different places. And they were always posing for me, smiling for me, you know, really letting me in the fold and letting me capture these pictures. Um, and it
And,
was, it
and
was
to just
amazing.
and just to go back to a theme aspect of what we're talking about here, they really sort of invited you into the family.
Yeah, they did. And, you know, I mean, I was a young artist in New York trying to make my way. And I was largely living in New York alone. You know, I had my dear cousin, and that was like my only family in New York. And I was kind of separated from most of my family. I was the only person in my family who became an artist, and I was kind of in New York on my own. And in some ways, you know, the people that I photographed became my community and became part of my family. And it was wonderful working with these drag queens because for sure, out of many, many subjects that I photographed, they welcomed me in with open arms. And I was at these events on holidays. I mean, I was with them at all times of the year, in the middle of the summer, in the cold of winter. You know, I was always, you know, following them around basically. And they totally invited me in, and I felt like I was a part of. And, you know, I would see Aquaria and she would smile at me and pose. And, you know, she kind of maybe recognized who I was, but didn't know me that well. But it was always great. You know, they're always great with their fans. And it was, I felt very included. And I think it's special for those of us who might not have a family at hand, you know,
Yeah.
to be invited in like that. It meant a lot to me.
Some of those points and aspects you mentioned, are really borne out in the in the response we've had to the exhibition, and which was very gratifying because, you know, if you take the sort of subject matter, you know, in the wrong hands with the wrong camera, you know, this could be sensational, this could be sort of quasi sexy or not. But what you did, and and the audience, you know, who came to see the exhibition, they really understood this and commented back on it. You know, there's none of that. You know, there's a very humanist aspect to it. You know, you're cutting through to the individual people, and very different individuals there are going through the exhibitions and looking at very. I mean, there is always, you know, there's always in you know, it comes with the drag scene, you know, projecting characters, you know, but they come from, and they're projecting to some extent larger than life, but they always come from a very honest individual disposition, you know. And I think what is a great quality of your work is that you sort of captured that rather than going to, you know, sensational aspects, you know, and the audience understood that.
You know, these were artists. I mean, this was a lot of these pictures were in Bushwick, which, you know, at the time was this kind of hotbed of these young creatives. And the drag queens that you see in these pictures, I mean, the costumes and the makeup was all art directed and curated by them. You know, they put these looks together. And I mean, it was, you would go to these events and it would be, you know, midnight, 1 a.m. And it was, you would see these almost like mythological looking creatures. You know, drag queens are larger than life, but these individuals had kind of put together their look, and there was a human being behind it all. And I just thought they were otherworldly. You know, they transport you. You know, it's exciting because they get to step on the stage and just be so unusual looking, and they're like creatures of the night. I mean, so beautiful. I just was mesmerized. And I was, you know, it's nice too because the pictures are all taken on film, you know, the old school, like 35 millimeter film, you know, the kind you used to mail into the pharmacy and get your prints back. And it kind of lends a timelessness to the pictures. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was in the presence of these otherworldly, timeless, amazing characters. And it was like stepping into a fairy tale. Like,
Without dwelling too much on the sort of camera technical aspect of it, but there is something that is noteworthy. It was, as I understand, a very simple camera. No great lighting gadgets, etc. But that enabled you to sort of capture the honest, genuine rawness of it, and I think that comes through, and there is, and the other thing is, and I'll stop here now, is we mentioned, it's part and parcel of drag culture, to project out something larger in life, but then there it was in a very small environment, having the courage to project out larger than life. At the cusp of when soon this became something much bigger, larger than life on, as we mentioned before, the festival scene. But then that's the entertainment aspect of it. And I'll just bring it back and close here, for as far as I'm concerned, it has been, and your photographic work is part of that, a very important contribution to an ongoing and growing and developing global discussion of gender identity and where we are with that. And it's been a privilege for Album Gallery to host that, to be part of that and host that exhibition.
Thank you so much. It's a really rich conversation, and I'm so excited that we have live and in person an amazing drag queen here with us this afternoon or this evening, wherever it is you might be. I want to really welcome and thank our viewers for joining us. But I want to turn it over to our amazing podcast host and host today, Michelle Meow, who has some very, very special guests and some awesome things to bring into the conversation.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Stefan, and thank you for the exhibit. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many incredible people, incredible icons in our community, but especially our drag queens who paved the way for a lot in our LGBTQ movement and also pop culture and all that good stuff. So without further ado, Juanita.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Ooh, I'm good. I'm always so excited to hear from you. And a lot of that is just because, yesterday was yesterday, but today is a brand new day. And I know you always have so much going on. However, this year was super exciting because you celebrated 30 years with your own exhibit. Why don't we just chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was honored by the San Francisco Arts Commission to put an exhibit that represented my 30 years of drag in San Francisco. I started doing drag the week before Halloween in October 30 years ago. And the show opened just a few weeks before that. It was up for 6 weeks. We just took it down last week. It was magic to work with Marcel Arisa, who helped curate the project. The gallery staff was also just super excited to see what I had to bring. And then, of course, Mr. David, who is my drag mother and my best friend for well over 35 years. And also the person that has made every single piece of clothing that I've ever worn while in drag. And I've had other designers say they want to make me something, but it never, ever happened. But I have over 4,000 pieces from David. And we had to narrow it down to like 12 or 15 pieces to fit into the gallery, along with all the artwork. So it was really special. Opening night I was just spinning like top, saying hello to people, faces I hadn't seen in years, some faces I hadn't seen in 20 years. I had friends fly in from New York, up from LA. It was really a joy and an honor to be there that night.
That's so awesome. I'll ask you later, but I mean, because some of us didn't get a chance to go to the exhibit, especially if you're not in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'm really hoping that you have an answer for us that possibly this exhibit travels or it's coming back or it's been extended. But you mentioned David Glamour, and you mentioned Drag Mother. And since we're talking about chosen family, I'm just going to go right to it. I mean, tell us about your relationship with David and what it means to be a drag mother.
Oh, wow. I met Mr. David in 1988. Um, in the early 80s, I was living here in San Francisco in the Castro district. I think I moved to the Castro probably around 1983. So I moved just a block away from Market and Castro when I was a little kid. And I wasn't even 21 yet. And I moved there at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. That's literally was ground zero for us here in San Francisco. So I spent those very young formative years growing up surrounded by darkness, which I was seeing every day when I walked out of my apartment. It was on the news, it was on other people's faces, it was constant. So between 83 and 87, I started making these little mini trips to New York to see if I wanted to move to New York. I'm a East Bay, California kid, and moving to New York was really going to be my big move away from home because San Francisco to me was my backyard and my playground since I was a young kid. So I did decide to move to New York in about 87. Fell in love with a very sweet boy who introduced me to Mr. David. And I literally, the day that I met Mr. David, I asked him to hem some pants for me, and he looked at me like, "Excuse me." But from that day forward, David and I became great friends. And I didn't start doing drag until I came back to San Francisco in 91. He moved here in 92, and that's when I started doing drag. So that was sort of the start of the story. I also to go back a little bit, my move to run away from AIDS in San Francisco, I landed in New York on West 10th Street at the West Side Highway, a block away from Christopher Street. So I landed right again, smack dab in the middle of everything, the beginning of all the stuff that was happening there as well. So.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the meaning of drag mother, or because
it's important.
Yeah,
it's interesting because when David was, when I first decided to do drag, which was going to be a one-time only, right before Halloween thing, and David had been doing drag as Glamour More, and I said, just put my makeup on me, and he literally looked at me and said, "Can you please be my only friend that doesn't do drag?" And I was like, "No, I got to do it once," and I did it and loved it and wanted to go out again the next night and the night after. And I think David probably he put my makeup on me for well over a year, probably a year and a half. He did my makeup every time I went out. The drag mother part of it comes when you realize that that person is entrusting with you the things that they've been taught. And yeah, that was putting on makeup. That was well, Mr. David, who was a designer, creating my style and what the style of Juanita would be, down to padding, how big the pad should be, how tiny my waist should be, like funny little things like that, which I think you don't really consider. Drag has, of course, become very mainstream, very popular at the moment. But I would say over the past 10 years, you could go onto YouTube and see, tutorial about how to put your makeup on, where that wasn't available for me at the time. So I really respected the fact that David took the time to teach me his craft, which was amazing to me. When I first saw David perform in New York on stage, I didn't know him, and I literally looked up at him performing and said to myself that this person's going to be part of my life. And I don't think I've ever said that in meeting anyone ever before. So David coming into my life and representing that for me was super, super important. David claims to have tons of drag daughters and tons of drag children and drag nieces and nephews. I've been very selective about it. And I only have a few drag daughters. I have tons of drag children in a whole nother way, but I have only about 4 drag daughters that I've really mentored and saw in them the same thing I saw in myself when I met David and looked at David as my drag mom.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. You know, it's yeah, there's drag mothers, there's drag children, and like you said, you're a little, selective, but at the same time I feel like being mother to many of us in the LGBTQIA plus community has a different meaning today. And you've done so much aside from your artistic contribution, your contribution to music, to LGBTQ nightlife, and but also to the movement in itself. You made activism and advocacy a huge part of Juanita More. And so can we talk, just a little bit about the importance of that part of Juanita More and the fact that you've raised millions for our most vulnerable?
I was probably in our first year of me doing drag here in San Francisco, and Mr. David and I, Glamour Moore, were talking about let's do a show. And I said, yeah. And like I said, I'd grown up here in San Francisco, so I knew everyone, and I knew what the scene was here, and I knew what was happening. And for me, I wanted to somehow figure out how to make it different. So I ended up talking to a friend of mine who was managing the comedy club downtown, and I ended up getting the comedy club for a weekend, and we sold it out, which was so surprising to me because most of the shows that we were seeing were in bars, dive bars especially, without great lighting and all that. And here we had an actual stage with great lighting and great sound and all that kind of stuff. And the minute that I saw that people were paying attention and that people were interested, I knew I had to give back to the community. So the following event that I did after that was for the Tenderloin AIDS Resource Center. And we did another big show, sold it out. It was a huge success. And I just continued to do that and to use my voice. I knew that I had the power to do that, and I wanted to get back to my community.
So I keep muting, unmuting, because in downtown, you always get the fire truck screaming through. Share with us just some folks or some stories of maybe what people have shared with you, what you mean to them, especially like young people, and this concept of chosen family. Truly, in the LGBTQ community, we understand what chosen family really means.
I am considered mom to the big majority of the community here in San Francisco. And I don't take that very lightly. I think that's a very high position to hold. I'm a great listener. I'm also someone who really gives tough love. So an example would be, this is the type of thing that normally happens to me. I'll have a party at some bar or nightclub, and I'll be out, and someone who may not know me so well but knows who I am will come up to me and introduce themselves and say, "Hey, Juanita, I'm looking for an apartment. If you know anybody that has a room, I really need a room. I just moved here." So about 10 years ago, I was hearing that really regularly. But at the same time, while I was out, another person would say to me, "I've got a spare room if you know anybody that needs a room." So I would spend my night looking for the two people to match them up. I ended up starting a housing group on Facebook, which now has over 10,000 members and has gotten a lot of queer people to connect with each other and get safe housing. So I'm super, super proud of that. There'd be other occasions when someone would come up to me and tell me that they broke up with their boyfriend and they needed to talk to me about it. Or, in the beginning, people coming up to me and telling me they had tested HIV positive. Like, the things I've heard are personal, and I've taken them to heart, and I've tried to take care of everyone that I come in contact that needs my help in some sort of way, motherly love or tough love. I try to give that to them.
Thank you so much for all your work. And I'm sure, right, like as you look back 30 years, and like you said, you saw people from 20 years ago or you hadn't seen in 20 years, or since the beginning, and then people who strangers really coming from all over the world to come see the exhibit. What were some of the responses of the exhibit that really stayed with you, that were super, memorable, that you would really like to share today?
The gallery decided that they wanted to put a little note card center where you could write me love letters. I love going to the post office. I always have. I send out mail to a huge mailing list that I have, whether it's holiday cards or Valentine cards or invites. And I do that all year long. And they decided that they wanted to give everyone a chance to write back to me. So when the show wrapped up, I got a stack of postcards that was about this tall. And I waited a few days. I was like, I can't look at these. But when I finally sat down and read through every single one of them, they were full of hope from people that have never met me before, people that were visiting, from other countries who said, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was very, very heartwarming. And I think that's what really touched me the most in the end, was to see all the love come back that I had put into it.
Yeah. And on that note, you had mentioned being drag today, right? It's evolved, things have changed. There's something somewhat scary that's going on, and that's the danger that's being imposed in our community, and drag queens are being attacked. I mean, I can't even, my mind's trying to wrap around how horrible this can be, that you would attack our drag queens. I'd love to get your thoughts on today's political environment and, the dangers, the rhetoric, the all bad stuff that is affecting our community today.
It is very disheartening. I am, of course, very politically active here in San Francisco. I put a voting guide out every time it is time for us to vote. It is very sassy. It is very to the point, and it is very progressive. And what is happening across the country is absolutely frightening to me. When I look back and like I said, have lived through that early part of the AIDS epidemic, that kind of energy was also being thrown at everyone, and thrown at me, thrown at all my friends, everybody. When you look back in history, in the 50s, when to get in drag, you could be arrested, especially here in San Francisco. So hate has never gone away. I would say that social media and the news have given it a chance to be even louder. So I keep encouraging my followers and my fans and my friends and my family to keep showing images of you happy with your partner, with your lover, with your friends, with your chosen family. Keep pushing those images out. I'm not saying not to fight what's happening, but to keep pushing those images out, and hopefully they will reach people and will change their minds and influence them to believe in love for everybody.
Thank you so much for that. Sometimes we have to be reminded of that. And just the way that you were talking about it, though, I mean, like, for example, I'm a big fan, and I love going to your events. I love checking out what you're doing, what you're working on. That last part where you said you are super politically involved, in my mind, I was like, would Juanita More ever run for office?
No. I won't be able to cuss. I won't be able to argue and fight with people like I might really want to. I don't know. It's I feel like from the sidelines, I'm able to reach more people and to share and talk to people in a different way. With most of the people that I've seen who have reached higher levels in politics, whether it's here or anywhere else, they're really influenced by a lot of other things, whether it's big money, private money, corporations, and even on a smaller level, a smaller community, that is still happening. I don't feel once you get into political office, do you truly have the freedom to really stand up and make the choices that you really want to make. I think you have a lot of people that you have to represent or support or, because of big money, do things for. So no, I'm not going to run for office. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. But you'll continue on, and I see, another 30 years of Juanita More. One of the things I thought about asking you is because I truly believe that in the 30 years that you've been doing this, you've changed a lot of hearts and minds. And yeah, I don't know if you have any stories to share about particularly changing somebody's heart and minds, but do you spend time at all trying to take down, these dangerous people, the far out there people who are attacking us?
Sure, but there's also people within my community who don't believe in what I believe in. And a couple, last year I had put out a voting guide, and it was in support of Chesa Boudin, our district attorney, staying in office. And I explained why in my email, which goes out to thousands and thousands of people. And the response that I got from that was the most hate email that I've ever gotten. And I took the time to respond to every single one of those people. Some of those people just said, "Fuck you, Juanita." That was it in their email. That was it. And I replied back and said, one, I wouldn't let you say that to my face. And I'm not going to let you say that to me in an email. I took the time to explain to you how I felt about Chesa Boudin and why he should still be in office. You saying that to me does not. And I actually got people to respond to me. Some of them didn't change their mind, but they explained to me why they were against him. And I appreciated that conversation. And I think a conversation with people is one of the most important things to do, especially in those kind of situations.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I know that our politics here in the San Francisco Bay Area can get pretty contentious and divisive in a lot of ways. One of the other things I love about your work is how inclusive you are, especially of our most vulnerable. I mean, like you had mentioned, HIV/AIDS had been a crux of you giving back and being an activist and an advocate. But on the other side of it, inclusive of those of us who were, identified beyond gay, lesbian, even bisexual. Many of us who are gender expansive, gender neutral, trans, and so much more. And so I'd love to hear from you about, protecting our young, youth communities, but especially those of us who are beyond those labels that at one time in our movement was what we were all about.
It's tough. One of the organizations that I have supported quite a bit over the past 10 years has been Our Trans Youth, which is based in the East Bay. It's part of GSA Network and the Transgender Law Center. And it's an organization that's helping to put out the voices of trans youth, whether it's through a video or through a story, a written story. And when I first saw those videos, my heart just wept, because even though I had a very easy coming out, I don't feel that I was able to express what these young kids are expressing. Their stories to me are the way to make change, and them sharing them to me is super important. It's really special. It's really special to hear people tell their true stories. And I think that that is going to be our best way to combat hate.
Thank you for that. Now, you obviously have demonstrated your leadership, your us calling you an icon. I mean, and the fact that San Francisco put on an exhibit of your work for 30 years. So tell us, right? Like, we missed it. can we catch it again? Is it traveling? What's next?
It's not at the moment. That has not been. That has actually really not been discussed. If it's traveling, we are considering putting a book together about the exhibit. So that's in talks, which is great to hear. But we haven't thought about making it travel. That was a lot of work to install. I have a lot of really pretty things that I've collected over 30 years.
I know we want to see more. We want to see more, but like okay, so your treasure trove of things, like everything, every piece, every dress, every wig, everything you've ever touched is so important to us in our community, because it's contributed, so much. I mean, for Elizabeth, the drag community included her, brought her in, and she felt honored, to photograph drag queens who have made a difference in her life. As we head to more mainstream, as far as drag culture and drag queens are concerned, what's one major point that you would like to make? And I think I have an idea. I think you probably would leave us with, it's so important that we stay grounded to our mission and our movement, which is to our community. But yeah, what do you think?
It was interesting when I was working on the gallery and had the director come over here the first day to sort of look at my stuff and see if this was going to really work, the two of us together. And I specifically pulled a few things. It wasn't a ton of things, because I didn't want to overwhelm them. But they left here saying, Juanita, you have more stuff than we have space to show. And you have stuff that is archival that we need to save forever. I've reached out to the director, of course, and been a big supporter of the GLBT Historical Society. And I've told them, come and take this stuff because I don't know what to do with it anymore. It's just sitting here waiting to go there. And I've been on tour inside the studio where all the archives are. And it's amazing to see all the things in our history that were queer. So I think preserving that kind of stuff for the future is super important. Um, and every day staying grounded and staying focused. And like I said earlier, put love out there and let people see that we are love.
Absolutely, 1,000%. I want to be a part of your circle forever. I want to be one of your children forever, by the way. And so thank you so much for all the work that you do. I look forward to the next 30 years. I'm actually going to bring in Madonna and Elizabeth now to join in on our conversation as we start to wrap up, and in case they have questions for you. Of course, if you're joining us live and you have a question for Juanita, feel free to jot them down there in the chat box and we'll get them to Juanita. So welcome back, Madonna and Elizabeth.
Hi. Wow.
Well, I should say welcome, Madonna's with us at InterPride. And then of course, Elizabeth. So welcome both of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Juanita, thank you for all of that. It's just beautiful to hear you speak about your experience, past and present. And I've been with InterPride doing fundraising for about a year and a half. I work with my colleague Ryan Starzik. We have, we give out global grants. We help do like humanitarian funding throughout the world for folks who are experiencing, death threats, losing their places to live. We're a member organization with 65, about 400 members in 65 countries. And we're just honored to have you come on this show and speak about, and Elizabeth too. I mean, you're both incredible people. And Stefan, thank you all for sort of coming in to support our work while we support your art, because I feel like that's how we're going to make it all together. That's how we're going to do the good work, is by continuing to collaborate. And, there's a theme here. It's called Chosen Family. It's InterPride's theme going forward. because sometimes families aren't the most supportive biological families. Sometimes they are, and we're grateful for those. But we've always, even, I came out in the 70s in Texas, and I was trying to find those spaces where I could feel supported as a little baby dyke, growing up in Dallas, Texas. And I will say that the drag community was one of the places where I felt very, very safe. If I went to a bar, or I went out or went to some party or anything like that to try to find my space in the world, there was always a drag queen, and a drag queen was always making me feel like I was one of the most important people in the room somehow. So, that work does not, it's beautiful. I'm sorry that, we have to go through these times of the hatred that gets thrown at us for various, I can't even imagine, unfathomable reasons. But what keeps us all going is the fact that we know we're all out here doing this, and our allies. And I just wanted to put that out there and let you know that InterPride is supporting our community all around the world in this way and trying to create safe and brave spaces for folks. So that's what I got to say. And if you want to donate to us or buy Elizabeth's book, which we can talk more about, then Elizabeth is very generously donating a portion of the proceeds to InterPride. Elizabeth, you want to take that away?
Yeah, it's really inspiring hearing Juanita talk about her career and seeing all the imagery, recording that period of time. And it's really important to represent drag queens and, other members of the community in really elevated ways, and showing, the history of like the movement. So it's just wonderful to see, Juanita, the pictures of the different parts of your career. And drag queens are such icons, and I think that they can really make a difference and be symbols and powerful for cisgender people like myself too. I think that it's kind of your appeal is universal. And
I love your work. I can't wait to see the book. It's really, really beautiful.
I might have to get one. I might have to get some pictures of Juanita. I might be showing up and scheduling a photo shoot with you, because as we can see, you're very photogenic. So
there's a couple of things I would like to mention. I should mention, and one is that as an ongoing effort, initiative, a proportion of online of Albion Gallery gorgeous drag sales will go to InterPride. And the second thing I want to mention is that, following up on the exhibition and following on the success of the exhibition, we have decided to exhibit Elizabeth Waterman's gorgeous drag work at the next International Photo London Fair in London in May next year. And I'm incredibly excited to share with you that, based on the submission we have made and the initial publicity work, we've had incredibly encouraging feedback and response from people about how important it is to show that kind of work on the international photography scene.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled about that, and I'm so excited. And drag queens, in my mind, are superstars, and they should be honored and shown as such. And it's just really important to show work that represents people in a particular way. And so I'm so excited to be a part of Photo London. And Stefan and I have put together a special raffle, actually, which is kind of cool. There's a copy of a book of mine that contains work from this period of time, many portraits of drag queens that are in the show and some other ones. And we've extended the raffle to give away a copy of the book through the end of the year. So there is a form in the chat. You can enter, you just enter, and then you might get a copy of this book for free, which is really cool. And indeed, I continue to support InterPride. So a portion of the sales from prints that are made, you might be interested in a print of one of the images you've seen for your home or wherever, you can contact Stefan. The information is all in the chat, and a portion will go to to benefit InterPride. So it's great to have visuals that are like, wonderful like this, making important causes known and illustrating them. So it's great.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
happy.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Elizabeth, and the support of InterPride, and Juanita. As we wind down, I mean, I'd say final, some final thoughts to share with us, but it's not final. There's so much more that you're going to do.
I am up to my earrings in projects. I can't even tell you how many things are floating over here, are being thought. I'm already working on Pride for 2023 in June. Like, I've been working on it. I've been talking to an artist about artwork. I've been trying to figure out who's going to be the beneficiary this year. Last year we donated, I think, $150,000 to the Q Foundation, which is helping people to have stable housing. And they're going to design an app so that people can connect and find housing, which is based off my housing group, which was just nuts. I love that. So
Yeah.
there's more projects.
Yeah, yeah. And a couple final questions for me is really also on the importance of you had mentioned it. Like, it's so important that we have to keep your things. We really have to archive them for LGBTQ history, but also I feel like drag queens, they're at the front of breaking that mold, that cycle of violence. It's gender bending. It's a way for all of us to really start to understand um, gender diversity, and maybe less of the stuff that makes it so unsafer at all. There's an obsession with such a heteronormative society. And so, if any last thoughts on that, the importance of drag queens to us as a society.
Well, I mean, when we look back in history, we look at the Stonewall riots. We looked at the Compton cafeteria riots here in San Francisco. Those were trans and people of color and drag queens who were fed up with being pushed aside, being beat up, being sent to prison for just being themselves. So they've always been at the front of the line, fighting for everyone's rights. So it's pretty important.
Right? So pick up a copy of Elizabeth's book, support the work of Juanita More, support the work of InterPride, because we're global, and isn't just about the United States, not about one person, but it's about all of us as a community around the world. This is a fun question for any of you, but do you see yourself as well, I guess we talked about being a drag mother, we talked about chosen family. What about drag grandparents or grandparents to our younger community?
I'm pretty sure I qualify for that. I'm probably the old person in the room. And I feel like, when I'm living, my wife and I are just living our lives. We're always sort of adopting people in our community. And I've gotten to the age now where I feel like they're now my grandkids instead of my kids. But, I feel like that's something we can do to continue to help our young community when they need help, when they need to know about the history of how we all got here. Juanita, when you were talking about the AIDS epidemic, and I very much was in the throes of that with my brother. He died in New York City in 1991, and when I was going through that, I needed people to help me get through some parts of that. And so I think that we can be here as elders, in my case, helping our youth come forward, helping shepherd them, take them, just when they want to. I am so in awe of our youth and how they just take back all of their power and all of their identity and all of their authentic selves and bring them to the forefront without apology. And I just think we need more of that. and more of that light you were talking about shining, Juanita, where we post photos of our families, our chosen families together, and we share those experiences. So grandma here, Noni.
No, I think our next generation of queer youth, they're gonna be pretty powerful.
Yes.
All right. Well, Juanita, I want to thank you again for joining us here and for the program. Thank InterPride. Thank Elizabeth. Thank Stefan and the exhibit. Thank all of you for joining us in this important conversation. Keep on the good fight and love our drag queens forever.
Yes, drag queen love.
Thank you all. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So much.